Hi, welcome to my workshop. What we're going to do today is we're going to make the sides of the fuselage. There are various things we have to look at in this connection, but other things that we also need, and what we really need are two of these 3mm balsa wood. We're going to cut both of the sides at the same time, and in order to do that we have to trace them onto paper. Well, you could of course cut them from the plans, but nobody wants to do that. So we'll start by cutting them, by tracing them, sorry. Now you could use some kind of fancy tracing paper, but I found out that pages from a school notebook are very good. They are thin and transparent enough to show nearly anything through. So I'm just going to use 3 of these and tape them together like this. Now, before we start tracing and cutting, there's something I'd like to show you. Now, in many cases, when designers draw up their plans, they use a little arrow to show us where the line is for the fuselage, or for anything really. Here it says that the 3mm balsa sides, this triangle denotes the outline of the fuselage side. So if we follow this, we can see that the little triangle always points to the line that we're supposed to cut to. And this applies to all of it. Here it's a little bit complicated because the line comes straight to there and then drops 3mm and then carries on. This is the seat for the stabilizer. Now there is one error. You can see that this one is pointing to the upper line, not the lowest line but the upper one. So is this one. This one here in between is pointing to the edge of the 1.5mm ply access panel. It shouldn't be doing that. It should be one line up. So we must ignore this one and just take the line that carries on from this triangle to that triangle. So I thought about now backing up. Now here I've got 2 balsa boards, sheets of balsa, and I'm going to cut the fuselage sides from them. Now what I've done is I've got this double tape and I've put 4 strips of it here, and you could use carpet tape as well, but then you'd have to cut it into thin slices. Carpet tape holds this far too well. Now the trouble is to get the backing paper off. Now we have to transfer this shape onto the balsa wood and cut it out. We could use something like we've done before, this spray adhesive, but I'm not going to do it this time. I'm just going to cut along or close to the lines and then use tape to hold this piece down. Now I'm going to remove the plan so I won't cut into it, and then cut this out. Okay, here we have the fuse sides. We can remove this. They are still stuck together with the double tape. And what we now have to do is take markings from here, from the plans, and put them on the sides. They are, for example, this balsa here, the ribs, F1 and F2, etc. So let's do that now. Before we put any markings, before we take this apart, it's a good idea to use the opportunity to see to it that they are exactly the same. So if we have to, we just run a piece of sandpaper on a stick along so that both the sides are exactly the same. There we are. Okay, now we have various markings that we want to transfer from the plan onto the sides. I've already done the left side, so now I want to do the right side. Now I can of course use the left side to give me the correct markings on the right hand side. So I just line up the two pieces of balsa and transfer all these markings here. And of course on the bottom too. There. I could of course used the side to do this, but since I'd already done the I could have used the plan, sorry, to do this, but since I've already had the left hand side, I could now do the right hand side like this. Now I connect the points, connect the dots. Now we have all the markings on both sides, and we've got two different sides, which is no mean feat, let me tell you. Now we're going to start gluing up, but before we do that, there's some markings that we have to have a look at that we haven't seen before. And to begin with, is this one. So it's a square with some lines in it. This is spruce or fir or any kind of harder wood than balsa. The next to it is this here. This is also spruce, and we see that there is spruce here surrounding the opening in the bottom of the fuselage where we can access the radio and put in the battery. Now if we look here, we see the balsa wood. This is a square with dots in it. This is balsa wood. This is the end grain of balsa. Here on the other hand we see a longeron or a stick of balsa, 3/16 or 5mm square, which is completely different to this one. So now we're going to start to glue something in. Now we're going to start gluing in, and the first thing we have to do is put in this this spruce here and here, and then we're going to put the what holds the wing on. These here, these are birch plywood that used to be a shelf in the school where I work. So you can reuse old material. There's no need to buy new. I've already glued this bit here down, and now I want to do the other side and make it exactly the same. But the trouble is that this is thicker, this little spruce here is thicker than this plywood, so I can't really lay it down like this because so what I thought was I'd get an offcut of plywood like this, and then everything will be in the air, and these two will be lying very very straight. Now I have to begin, however, by gluing down the spruce bit, and this comes here, and I've marked in red exactly where it's supposed to be, and I'm going to use CA glue to put this in. This is going to be the lining of the hatch or hole that will be here in the bottom of the fuselage, and on top of this we'll get 1.5mm plywood. There we are. Now then we have these. We're going to glue them there like that. These will hold the wing. Now in order to do that, because these have been finished with some kind of lacquer or something, I want to sand them a little bit so that they can be glued. Lacquer really doesn't take glue very well. So there we are, like that. Now I want to put this down here and put the plywood underneath. So now it's lying on top of the plywood here. Put this down so that I don't glue both of the sides together, and then line these up perfectly. It's a good idea to use clamps like this to hold it so that nothing will move. There we are. And now I can glue these down and make them exactly equal to the ones on the other side. The glue I'm going to use this time is this Tight Bond, but since this is too large of a bottle, I've got this here. This is an absolutely brilliant glue bottle. So I just put some glue down here, spread it around and then put it in place. Here I've got a piece of steel. I'm going to put that there just to hold it while doing the other one. Here. Now, I know the distance between these two should be 9.8. There. Here's another piece of steel. Now I'll just have to let this harden. There we go. Here's one thing that is quite important for a model of this type. The motor does not just point straight out of the fuselage. No, it points a little bit down. The wing is up here and the motor is down here and has to pull against the wing. So I imagined that the lines I had already put down here were a little bit too much. So I got this piece of paper, put a straight line on it, and then made this line here alongside the firewall, or F1. And then I put it down onto the model like this, aligned this against the top, and lo and behold, there was too much incidence on the firewall, and I drew a line here in red ink. I also did that here. Now the next step is to put some doublers, 1.5 millimeter doublers down here on this side, and the firewall here and F2 here are outside these doublers. So these two, because the fuselage is supposed to be parallel here, these have to be exactly the same in width. If they are not, we have to make them exactly the same. So next step, put down the doublers. Now I have cut the doublers in here. I've fitted them in between the wing fasteners, wing struts, and they should reach from behind the firewall F1 to in front of F2 here. So now I have to glue these down. Now the choice of glue can be problematic because if we use something like this is a wood glue, it usually contains water, and water has the effect of balsa to do this, to cup it like that. But I think we're okay here because the grain in the sides is running lengthwise and the grain in the doubler is running up and down, so they might cancel each other out. And then of course I've got these fantastic little blocks of steel that I can use to weight these down. So I think I'll just use my my good glue here. Here we have the Doppler glued in, and this will now have to dry or harden, and this might take most of the night, so we'll come to it again tomorrow.